Hi everyone, I'm Alister Benn. Welcome back to Expressive Photography. In last week's video, I talked about New Year's resolutions and our expectations and how we can move forward into 2023, maybe with a little bit of a better understanding of what we can achieve and how we're going to best achieve that. What I want to do today is talk about how we can change the way we see for the better permanently and in such an incredible way that we will forever have a different relationship with the landscape. We will see things that we didn't see before. We will understand where the shots are in the landscape instead of just pointing our cameras at the view, and how to get the most of our time out in the landscape regardless of the weather conditions. Another little piece of excellent news that I do have is that the book is being printed as we speak. My new book, Out of Darkness, which should be with us fairly soon now, and I got some lovely video from the printer this morning just to show it coming off the printer there, and the level of accuracy that they are striving for to make the book as perfect as possible. Very exciting to see that coming together, and I do look forward to starting to ship those in March. If you haven't already done so, please click on the link below and check out Out of Darkness. It's very much the story of how expressive photography came about, how my depression and anxiety kind of forced me into a corner where I had to change something because I was just so miserable all the time. And I can assure you that now I'm an entirely different person and feel so much better about everything. It's such an important thing for landscape photographers to fixate about weather and the conditions that we're going to have, as if the only great photographs that we can actually make are somehow phantasmagorial or incredible, oversaturated and dynamic photographs. It's no coincidence that photographers flock to pointy mountains at sunset or sunrise. It's just pointy mountain, sunrise, sunset, guaranteed good photograph. And what I'm hoping to try and achieve, not just with today's video, but with all of the content that we make for the channel here, is to expand your definition of what good photography is, and to understand that you can get so much more from the landscape on the days when perhaps the weather doesn't quite cooperate, or for different circumstances you couldn't get there on the day you wanted to get there. So what I want to do today is to point out that the landscape is a busy place. The moment you step out of the car at the parking lot and walk into the landscape, there's an awful lot of it. And yes, you can go to beautiful locations and stand looking out across a huge landscape and see some very beautiful things. But equally, the landscape isn't always harmonious. It isn't always perfect. There are distractions, there's man-made elements, there's power lines and poles and cars and other people. Sometimes the weather isn't quite the way we like. I've heard people talking on workshops saying, shame the clouds were in the wrong part of the sky. All of these types of comments are really definitions of people who haven't got the greatest relationship with being there, and that they have an expectation of something else. I've been very fortunate over the years to spend hundreds or thousands of hours in the landscape, quite often under beautiful conditions, seeing things that are remarkable and beautiful. But it certainly doesn't happen all the time, and even with planning, there's no guarantee that the weather is actually going to behave the way you want it to. So what I want to talk about today is there are attributes of the landscape that we will be drawn to. I call these the 5 triggers, and I've spoken about them on the channel before and written about them in my ebooks Luminosity, Contrast, The Color of Meaning, and Creativity Superpowers. And these elements, these attributes of the landscape are luminosity, contrast, color, atmosphere, and geometry. Now that is very straightforward, and in the abstract it all seems quite easy. But the difficulty that people have is they don't actually have a relationship with these attributes. They have a tendency to walk into the landscape and see mountains and clouds and rocks and rivers and trees and whatever else is in there. And they don't fully appreciate the draw of various bits of the landscape. So what I want to do is look at some of the photographs that you can see here in a little bit more detail to understand the elements that are actually engaging us, All of these are photographs that I quite like. You know, they're things that I've taken. Some of them are going back decades, so not all of them are brand new by any means. But I want to look at some of these photographs and discuss the attributes that are present in the scene so that we can fully understand exactly why I and some other people may agree that they are pleasing photographs. I was certainly a person who, for many, many years, was drawn to pointy mountains at sunset. And most of my travels early on in my photo journey were to dramatic places at times of the year when it was going to be dramatic. This one here is on the Isle of Skye, very famous piece of the coastline, and become incredibly popular these days. And I was very happy to find an interesting composition, something new, something different that I hadn't seen before. But if we consider the 5 triggers that I've been talking about, luminosity is when something is brighter than something else. It's an attribute there. And that luminosity is like energy. The higher the luminosity, the more energy we're going to get in the scene and the more vibrant and powerful we're going to feel it. I think few would argue that there's not a lot of energy in that little cascade as the wave flops over that nice pointy rock there. So we have luminosity that leads us through the frame, and that's just part of compositional skill, I suppose, is creating a path, creating a transition, allowing the viewer to explore within the confines of a frame. The second area of luminosity we have here is in conjunction with colour, and we can see that dramatic sunset there with the sun dropping down behind the Coolin Mountains is creating a combination of colour and luminosity. So then you're adding warm colour and luminosity and it becomes magnified. This area actually feels very powerful. This feels energetic. We then introduce geometry to this, and of course the pointy mountain and the jagged skyline is a very dynamic thing. So we're drawn to that, and we have a tendency to want to look at pointy things. So we've got the pointy rock in the foreground, and we've got some other angles, and also the angle of the luminosity going up through the frame there. Once we combine luminosity, contrast, geometry, and color, we're already adding lots of ingredients for the viewer to get their teeth into. If you think about it in a cooking way, the more ingredients that we can add that are harmonious together, the better the food is going to be, theoretically. The final one is atmosphere. An atmosphere is normally manifest in things like flowing water, clouds, fog, rain, snow. Any water element is usually considered atmosphere. So here we've got some nice golden water, quite calming, not too energetic, and of course the water is the energy in that foreground, but we've also got some nice beams coming off the top there. This is a photograph I particularly like. It was quite a popular print when I released it a few years ago, but it has attributes. And the other important thing to appreciate here is that it's contained within a 4:5 vertical aspect ratio. That 4:5 is also a very, very important part of the way that we express our relationship with the landscape. Different aspect ratios here would give us a very different perspective. If we had this as a 16:9 and had an awful lot more of the rough, rocky, shadowy, slightly less interesting shoreline there, or if we had a bunch more water, it would be a lot more spacious and it would feel very, very different. This is taken at the same location, pointing the camera in a different direction and in very different lighting conditions. The energy of this scene is made up of different attributes, but of the same qualities. We have the luminosity in the surf interacting with the shoreline, and because that creates contrast in conjunction with atmosphere, in conjunction with geometry, and a little bit of color, we are creating a very dynamic slice of quite interesting geology and the interaction with the water in this very moody, subdued light. By the time we start looking across the water there to, again, pointy mountains, we've got tons of atmosphere, heavy looming clouds, but we've also got that colour that's coming in here. All of my compositions, I like to think them as being contained within a frame and getting across that concept, getting across that feeling of sort of moodiness and energy and power within this composition. Once we start talking with reflections, this was a perfectly calm morning on the west of Scotland, very famous mountain here, in pretty much what you consider perfect light, this beautiful soft pinky glow in those clouds. Once we have reflections, this frame is pretty much 50-50. I couldn't make it any more calm. I've taken away all of the jarring elements and just have the perfect calm reflections. As soon as you introduce that mirroring of content, again, we're just saying the top and the bottom are equal. This is about harmony, balance, and atmosphere. I think when we're in the landscape, it's so important for us to feel the draw of the various elements. You can see here that little bit of sunlight just catching the top of the mountain there on the left-hand side, but also these strong points and this strong diagonal. It creates a broad area of interest, and you could zoom in on that and create more photographs that are going to have a very similar feel. I just happen to go very wide with this one. Of course, we do love dynamic light. We do love dynamic landscapes. This is another famous place on the Isle of Skye, the Old Man of Storr, become an incredibly popular destination to go to. This was actually in the afternoon and there was nobody there. I like to go when there's less people around, but the attributes are still there, and we're creating a very strong focal point where we're bringing the luminosity, the contrast, the atmosphere, the geometry, and the colour all very much contained around that pinnacle or those pinnacles over there. The rest of the scene is a broad 2:1 aspect ratio, which is going to make it feel expansive. We're giving that sense of space and width and massiveness. The more we crop down and contain, the more likely it is that people are going to feel more confined or more concise. Aspect ratios are incredibly important. I could go on and on and on through many of these photographs, but what I wanted to start getting down to is every single landscape contains one or more, well, obviously more than one, there's usually three at least. There's always going to be some luminosity, there's always going to be some contrast, and there's always going to be some geometry. That's normally what's going to be in there. Here's a very simple scene. This was taken again in the Wester Ross area of Scotland, and this one is stripped down to the bare core. We have a very dynamic, contrasty bush, a small little tree that's growing in the loch, but the water levels were so high I had a very nice little reflection there. Very misty. It was actually raining most of the time, and this was just a moment when it stopped. So this is very much a photograph that is full of atmosphere. It's quite high key, the energy levels are quite high, it's got quite a lot of tons of atmosphere, but we've also got this really lovely pointy geometry in the background there, with a tiny little bit of colour in these late autumn grasses or winter grasses that go this very rich yellowy golden colour. So this is a photograph that's made up of very few elements, but the key thing about this scene is it's coming from a place that's made of much, much more. There's a whole shoreline covered in trees, there's rocks, there's on the right hand side there's obviously more mountain, and the biggest problem is there's this big horizontal shoreline on the other side of the loch, and when the fog isn't there, it's a hugely important thing because it's this big horizontal line going right through the middle of the frame. So obviously the conditions that were present helped me to eliminate one of the things that would make this photograph far, far less interesting if the light was better or the conditions were less bad. I mean, this was what you would really call a horrible day on the west of Scotland. Here's another very, very simple example where we have strong horizontal lines. So we've got the one that goes through the frame between the beach and the ocean. and then another one between the ocean and the shoreline on the other side of the bay. We only have a small amount of interesting geometry with this peak in the background, but we have a very, very strong foreground. Understanding the relationship between foregrounds and backgrounds is a fundamental way to see the world in a different way. Sometimes backgrounds are good for context, sometimes they're good to show the place, but you need to have something as an anchor. There has to be something in the photograph that someone is wanting to look at or you are going to want to engage somebody with. In this particular case, I just loved the way the light was shining on this wet sand in the foreground here, and I really love the foreground here. There's an argument to say that we could probably crop out the mountain entirely and the photograph wouldn't be much worse, but we would lose all of that beautiful golden atmospheric sky. Landscape photography has changed my life. It's the one thing in my life that's been there for 20 plus years now. The last 15 of them as a professional photographer. Every time I'm out in the landscape, I never cease to be amazed at the number of different things that I could point my camera at, from simple scenes to complex scenes, from big landscapes to small landscapes, from dynamic landscapes to calm landscapes. I love that act of inquisitiveness, from stepping away from the beaten track, going places that are less obvious or less well known, and discovering our own things. Of course, the conditions that we encounter, they can be dynamic, they can be calm, they can be boring, they can be flat. We don't really have that much control over that. I'm just about to head off to Spain. In fact, when this video is going live, I'll just be arriving in Spain, meeting up with Adam Gibbs to run some workshops over the next couple of weeks. And we have no real idea of what the weather conditions are going to be. It could be stormy or it could be 18 to 20 degrees Celsius. We're still not entirely sure. The weather forecast is somewhat unpredictable. But we're going to have some clients with us and we're going to go out into the landscape and we're going to see what there is. And the important thing, and this is the point of this video, is that there will be luminosity, contrast, color, atmosphere, and geometry in abundance. And understanding where all of those things are coming together, where the dynamic, where a cliff face is meeting the ocean, where the waves are going to crash over pointy rocks or smooth rocks, we can make photographs that have very different feel based on all of these combinations of attributes. If you would like to explore your expression or your expressive photography to the deeper level, we're offering a 30-day free trial now on the Expressive Photography Members Forum. If you click on the link below, you can sign up and get 30-day unlimited access to all of the content that is on there, see the type of engagement that we're having between the members, the type of discussions that we have, the deep dives, and the videos that I produce exclusively for that audience. Please check that out. We would love to have you over there, and it is turning into an incredibly creative and expressive place. Like I said, photography is one of these things that's changed my life and made me a better person and made the relationship I have with the landscape better. This is what work I want to bring to you. This is what I want to try and do to help you to achieve those things yourself. I still know lots of unhappy photographers, people who have huge expectations every time they go into the landscape and feel very, very bad when they are not fulfilled. If you're measuring your time in the landscape by the photographs that you're making or indeed not making, then you're also going to find yourself not always being happy with A, the results of your photography, or B, the entire person that you are. So, welcome to Expressive Photography. I do look forward to bringing you some more vlog-like in the field content over the next few weeks from Spain. Maybe Adam and I will be in each other's videos or something, and we'll try and have some discussions about how we differ and how we see the world differently. But hopefully you found this of value. If you have, please don't forget to click the subscribe button and give the video a thumbs up, because that really helps us with the old YouTube algorithm. And of course, we hope that the content is of value to you. That's it for today. I could talk about these photographs much more, but I do look forward to talking to you again next week. I hope you're well wherever you are and you have a very happy relationship with your photography. But for now, that's it. Bye for now.